Muy bien, buenas tardes. El viernes 17 de enero, yo soy Luis Parra en Ameritax junto a todo nuestro equipo y hoy estamos de manteles largos, como dicen. So excited, bien felices de poder presentar nuestro calendario para este año 2025 y además compartir con dos oficiales del IRS algunos temas de interés, como es la Oficina de Profesionales de Impuestos, una representante en DC, y Brenda Luke de la Oficina de Comunicación en New York. So, es un webinar gratuito, va a ganar un crédito con su PITIN, pero no por ser gratuito no tiene todo el contenido que acostumbramos. Estamos celebrando 10 años en Ameritax, así que estamos súper felices de comenzar el año con educación y qué mejor acompañado por el IRS. So, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Brenda, for coming. Thank you, Lise. So, we are celebrating 10 years in Ameritax, and today is fantastic day to present in the open house the 2025 calendar for Ameritax and also the Brenda presentation and the SEP presentation. So let's go to start with the calendar. Also, Gabriela Santo in one moment is going to show about the calendar, and it's coming the next video, Odalis Parra, our education director. So let me share my screen so you can see briefly about the activity we have on the calendar, including live events, including webinar, and including our every year annual launch in May 1st. So let me share my computer and explain about the most important uh, event we want to share with you today. Además, estamos en vivo en Facebook con muchos amigos que si no se han conectado se pueden conectar todavía y tenemos a casa llena el Zoom. Así que bien contento que podamos compartir con ustedes esta presentación. So here is our calendar in our main website, americantaxclub.com. So you can see me and Olalis smiling. So basically today is January 17, is the open house, including, like I mentioned before, the two presentations with the IRS. And next Wednesday, we have for first time in the entire country, the awareness days to bring more information about the due diligence. I sent today one special invitation to Brenda to participate in next webinar, January 22nd at 2 o'clock Eastern time. If you participate on the webinar, you receive 2 credits. So, hoy estamos presentando nuestro calendario y el miércoles vamos a tener el Día Nacional de Concientización sobre la debida diligencia, incluyendo a Brenda de la IRS, y usted recibirá dos créditos. Como muchos ya saben, estamos apoyando los cambios en la circular 230 y en febrero 22 vamos a tener un webinar informativo, es un sábado, para presentar los cambios y que usted pueda opinar. Como todos los años, vamos a presentar un evento un poquito más local, se llama Viva la Patria y es el recuerdo de la independencia de la República Dominicana. So on February 22nd, the webinar will be related to the proposal change to the circular 230. So the idea is to bring the change the IRS heads want to make and ask for comments. The general plan is to be on the public meeting in March 6th in DC to support all the changes because we agree with the change. En marzo vamos a regresar con un evento que tiene muchos años, se llama Mujeres en América. Es un evento para reconocer un grupo de mujeres que tienen que ser preparadoras de impuestos y compartir una noche de información sobre ese papel tan importante de las mujeres en toda la vida de nosotros, especialmente Mujeres en América. Varios años lo hemos celebrado y reconocemos y traemos mujeres que con sus aportes, de nuevo, no tienen que ser preparadoras, pues hacen de la vida nuestra mucho mejor. The annual launch, May 1st. So make your calendar now. May 1st, the annual launch in New York City. The IRS will be there. So the Department of Finance New York and other agencies coming to New York. So, marque su calendario para el 1 de mayo, ¿verdad? Esté con nosotros. Y luego usted va a encontrar todas nuestras clases. Una de las más importantes va a ser en mayo 19 al 23, por primera vez en vivo en New York, en vivo en Miami y virtual, la clase preparatoria para el examen de EA. Como hemos dicho varias veces, si usted quiere avanzar su carrera, esta es la oportunidad para convertirse en EA. So May 19 to 23rd is the EA preparation class for the exam. Very, very interesting. 1 week, 8 hours every day to be prepared for the exam. Y luego tenemos varias clases de bookkeeping, tenemos tax planning. Por primera vez este año vamos a tener una serie de corporaciones. Ok, lo pueden encontrar todo aquí. Y estamos preparándonos para the big events in Boston and Miami. The Boston Tax Marathon and the Miami Tax Marathon. So we don't have the date yet because we are waiting for the hotel. But hopefully in the next few weeks we can publish the date. Last year, Brenda, the entire team in New York was in Miami. It was fantastic experience. So I really, really hope this year, Brenda, you can come back to Boston and New York and Miami with your entire team, including Javier from Puerto Rico. So,
Oh yeah, Javier.
Javier, we are working so hard to bring the most complete education offer to you in English, Spanish. Here is Maria Ostos in Orlando. She is one of the instructors for Ameritax. So, hello, Maria. So, I know you committed already to be in 2025 in Ameritax. So, very, very important. You want to say something about the offer we have, Maria? Welcome.
Okay, I'm here. Hello, everyone. So happy to be here. So happy to share my experience, my knowledge with all of you throughout the year. And what specific do you want me, Luis, to mention?
Basically, your experience as instructor here.
Oh, yes. Well, it's been so many years working with together with Luis and learning from him, of course. But I've been in the industry for 20 years. I'm an enrolled agent I do a lot of tax strategies and tax planning for my clients, and I love it. This career is my passion. I respect it so much. And throughout the years, I've been teaching how to make it better. We have so much responsibility in the industry. And every training, I try to do my due diligence to really bring the best education for every tax professional or customers that sometimes they want to get educated to understand better the IRS and the rules and regulations and all that. So I'm so happy to share what I have been learning for many years, and I'm so happy for the trust that Luis has put in me to be part of the instructors. I'm very honored to be here and to be an asset to Ameritax.
Thank you. Gracias, María. Gracias. Pues muy bien, básicamente eso es parte de lo que queremos presentar. Vamos a enviar un email con todo el contenido, pero ahora queremos mostrar con Gabriela Santos, queremos mostrar también, vamos a enviar el calendario electrónico, de modo que usted lo tenga en su computadora y con un clic pueda también acceder a nuestros eventos. So now, Gabriela Santos, I store ready. So, adelante, Gabriela.
Hola a todos, espero que estén bien. Pues nada, ¿verdad? Mi nombre es Gabriela, soy parte del equipo de Ameritax y entonces yo les estaré presentando lo que sería nuestra revista folleto online, algo nuevo por aquí. Como pueden ver, aquí tenemos la portada, ¿ok? Este material se lo vamos a estar enviando por email, como dijo, ¿verdad? Luis. Y como pueden ver en nuestra portada, tenemos la información de Ameritax, junto también con un QR para que usted pueda descargar, ¿verdad? Nuestra aplicación. Luego de eso, tenemos también lo que sería el índice y la bienvenida, donde también el índice tenemos también parte de la información que contiene este folleto online, donde también si usted desea ir a una página en específica, ver los cursos, la parte de los libros o los servicios que ofrecemos junto también con los patrocinadores, puedes seleccionar algunos de ellos y te llevaría directamente a lo que sería la página web, ¿ok? Entonces, en esta parte de acá podemos ver que tenemos nuestros libros y nuestros cursos. Si usted desea, en ese momento, ay, yo deseo el libro de Due Diligence, usted se puede parar encima del librito de Due Diligence y este te llevaría directamente a la página, ¿verdad? Para que usted realice su compra, ¿ok? Entonces, también si usted allí, ¿verdad?, desea ir directamente a los cursos que sería de marzo y mayo, pues vámonos a la página 5. Y este te llevaría directamente a la página 5, que dentro de ellas, como puedes ver, tenemos también nuestros cursos, tenemos los QR y también usted puede oprimir, ¿verdad? El cuadrito del curso que usted desea. Digamos que en este caso yo quiero Miami Maratón, me quiero dar el viajecito para Miami, pues vamos a hundir Miami y este te llevaría directamente a lo que sería la página de Miami Maratón. ¿Ok? Y ahí puedes realizar tu compra. Entonces, en esta parte, ¿verdad? Después de las páginas de los cursos, webinars gratuitos y también eventos, tenemos también lo que sería el área de servicio, sería el área de los sponsors y luego culminamos con nuestro gran logo, ¿verdad? Y terminamos con el calendario 2025. Esto, ¿verdad? Usted lo puede compartir con sus colegas, lo puede tener también ese link en sus oficinas, si viene de momento, ¿verdad? Un cliente que desea tomar un curso de taxes, también se lo puede brindar. Esto, ¿verdad? Es un link y también va a estar colocado como QR. Y lo hicimos pensando hacerle también un poquito a las personas algo más fácil para que ellos puedan llegar a la página web, porque digamos que no tengan sus computadoras encima, no son tan diestros con las computadoras, pues mira, oprime aquí y ya te llevaría directamente a lo que sería la página, ¿verdad? Web para que puedas realizar tu compra, puedes registrarte al webinar y también, ¿verdad? Puedas tener entonces acceso a los libros que tenemos en la plataforma. Y esto sería todo lo que como sería, ¿verdad? El folleto online.
Excelente, gracias Gabriela, me encanta, así que esté pendiente, lo vamos a poner en el correo electrónico que tenemos ya disponible de ustedes, lo vamos a publicar también en Facebook, como tú dijiste, para que esté disponible para mucha gente, eso es lo que necesitamos, que esté disponible para mucha gente. Pues muy bien, ya usted conoce nuestra oferta, queremos destacar básicamente las clases de EA, ¿verdad? Si usted quiere subir de nivel, venga a nuestras clases o dale para un servidor, seremos los instructores utilizando el material de Glen, una de las primeras compañías en el país. Y por primera vez vamos a ofrecer dos series. Una serie de Task Planning, María nos lo había propuesto, así que ya está la serie de Task Planning. En vez de un webinar, vamos a tener uno en junio y uno en octubre para poder preparar a los profesionales de impuestos y a sus clientes. Y por primera vez también la segunda serie sobre corporaciones. C Corporation, S Corporation y Partnership. Mucha gente nos pregunta que quiere aprender y a veces dábamos una sola clase y como que, no aprendí mucho. Ahora no va a ser así. Ahora va a tener una sección para cada uno de esos tipos de entidades. Así que básicamente hemos hecho un esfuerzo, todo el equipo en Ameritax, personas que no salen en la cámara, que trabajan detrás de la cortina, pero que todos tenemos el mismo interés de que nuestra oferta educativa sea de excelencia y que le ayude a crecer en sus negocios. Necesitamos que esta inversión que usted hace de tiempo y cuando es de dinero, les sirva para crecer en su negocio. Así que muy bien. Bueno, vámonos con el IRS. A ver, ¿dónde está Lisette? Ah, por ahí viene Lisette, ¿verdad? Lisette Shoemaker, ella es oficial de la oficina de Return Prepare Office en Washington, D.C. y está con nosotros hoy. Estamos súper contentos. Lisette también habla español, pero no sé si lo quiere hacer en inglés. Lo que ella quiera, nosotros estamos disponibles. Lisette, bienvenida. Welcome to Ameritax. Vamos a esperar a que Lice prenda su micrófono o que use el teléfono como guste y yo voy a poner su
¿Me, me,
presentación.
me oyes, Luis?
Sí, le
¿Me
escucho
oyes
muy
ahora?
perfecto.
Sí, no, lo que yo estaba diciendo, puedo hacer algunas palabritas en español, pero lo puedo hacer como en Spanglish, algunas
No hay
cosas.
problema, como guste. Bienvenida y estamos bien agradecidos que haya
Okay.
sacado tiempo para estar hoy con nosotros. Así que ya yo tengo la presentación lista. Todo suyo.
Ajá, bueno, esta presentación, como ustedes la ven aquí, está en inglés. ¿Vas a empezar con la primera diapositiva? ¿Estás enseñando? ¿Así como lo vas a ver? Ok,
Sí, ¿ya la puede ver?
ok, perfecto. Sí, yo la veo. Ok. Ok, so, como yo dije, esta presentación va a ser de la Oficina de Preparación de Declaraciones. Y eso es lo que se llama en inglés el Return Prepare Office. Y yo voy a hablar sobre de lo que hace la oficina de RPO. Ok, vamos a seguir a la otra diapositiva. Y aquí se dice lo que vamos a hablar hoy sobre el programa de los Enrolled Agents y también el proceso de renovar. Y también vamos a hablar sobre el P10 Compliance y el cumplimiento del P10 y el del Annual Filing Season Program Requirements. Y también vamos a hablar sobre la seguridad de datos y la responsabilidad que tienen los preparadores de impuestos. Como llamamos así en inglés ahí, data security. Ok, entonces ahora vamos a hablar de lo que estás ahí ahora, de lo que hacemos nosotros. Ok, so lo que hace RPO. Entonces aquí te lo voy a explicar en inglés porque RPO, so what we do is we register and promote qualified tax professional community. And we also oversee and we monitor education, testing, enrollment, and suitability programs. And as it says here, we engage stakeholders to create an environment that features compliance and program improvement. Eso es muy importante. Ahora vamos a seguir al otro. Ok. Así que vamos a empezar ahora. Yo voy a empezar con the Tax Return Preparer Credentials. Estos son los Credentials Preparers. And these are lo voy a decir en inglés porque yo creo que está más fácil porque lo ven en inglés aquí en la diapositiva. The enrolled agents, those are licensed by the IRS, and they have to pass a suitability check. And to be an enrolled agent, and I know I heard that some people in the audience are already enrolled agents, you know you have to pass the 3-part special enrollment examination. And also, you have to complete 72 hours of continuing education credits every 3 years. And that is an important license. That's an important credential because that is the credential that is created by the IRS. And then we have, as part of the P10 holders, we have attorneys. That attorneys are licensed by their states, and they also have to have suitability background, and they have to have ongoing continuing education, and they have to pass character standards. So let's go on to the next slide. And then another credentialed tax return preparer that are P10 holders are the certified public accountants and what we call the CPAs. They also are licensed by their state agencies. They have to have passed an exam, become a CPA. They must comply with ethical requirements, and they also have to complete continuing education to maintain an active CPA license. And next slide. And then we have a program that IRS has created, and it's called the Annual Filing Season Program Participants. And this is a voluntary program, and it's just to recognize the efforts of certain tax return preparers that go on and get additional education. What IRS is doing is that we encourage tax professionals that are PTIN holders to continue their education and to become ready for the filing season. So these annual filing season program record of completion participants, they get that after they do meet certain continuing education requirements, and they also elect to be part of Circular 230. And I'll go more into that information a little later on, as well as some more about the enrolled agent program. And then we have the non-credential preparers, and those are just the PTIN holders. The tax return preparers who have an active PTIN, but they don't have any professional credential, and they do not participate in the annual filing season program. Go on to the next slide. And the credential tax return preparers, many of them that are the ones that are enrolled agents, certified public accountants, and attorneys, what they have is unlimited representational rights. These credentialed return preparers, they may represent clients before the IRS on any tax matters, including audits, payment collection issues, and appeals. Go on to the next slide. And the annual filing season program participants, what they have is considered limited representational rights. They may only represent clients whose returns they have prepared and signed, but only before revenue agents, customer service, and the taxpayer advocate service. And one of the things that the annual filing season program participants, they also are included in the directory of federal tax return preparers with credentials and select qualifications. And PTIN holders are not authorized to prepare, PTIN holders are authorized to prepare tax returns, but have no authority to represent clients before the IRS. But there's an exception to this. These returns, this is only for returns they prepared and filed. So what happens is that prior to December, on or before December 31st, 2015, they did have representational rights, but after that date, PTIN holders are only authorized to prepare tax returns, but have no authority to represent clients before the IRS. On to the next one. And this is the makeup of the PTIN holders. As of December 2nd, 2024, we had 849,000 active PTIN holders. And as you can see there, the makeup of the non-credentialed PTIN holders versus the enrolled agents, which were around 64,000, and the annual filing season program record of completion participants was around 78,000. And then the CPAs, which is in red there, is number 2, were about 213,000. And as you can see, the non-credentials were about 467,000. So there's a lot more non-credentialed tax return preparers. And we encourage everyone to consider becoming an enrolled agent, or at the minimum doing the annual filing season program record of completion. Because with that, you do get limited representational rights. Go on to the next one. And this just shows how very important the impact of paid return preparers are. And in 2023, $12.3 trillion of total income was on returns prepared by paid preparers. And also 1.9 trillion of the total tax and 434 billion of the total refunds. So those are all from returns that were prepared by paid tax return preparers. Next slide. Now, as I said earlier, I'll talk a little bit about the enrolled agents and the credential. And this is an elite professional credential that was created by the Internal Revenue Service. And it's recognized for that it has a reputation for the tax return preparers that have that enrolled agent, that EA credential, that they are excellent in tax planning, individual and business tax return. They're proficient in preparation and in representation of their clients. They have unlimited, like I said, they have unlimited practice rights in front of the IRS. They can represent clients in audits, in payment collection, in issues, in appeals, and in tax court. And like we said earlier, there's around, as of December 2024, there were around 64,000 EAs. Next slide. And let me go through the process now of how to become an enrolled agent. First of all, you have to always obtain a preparer tax identification number. And that PTIN, that has to be renewed annually by December 31st. So all enrolled agents, they have an active PTIN. An enrolled agent has to also pass that 3-part special enrollment exam. And sometimes you'll see it as SEEC, that stands for Special Enrollment Exam. And what that's the cost for is $259 per part. There's an individual part, there's a business part, and then there's an ethics representation part. And that 100 multiple choice questions, and it's 3.5 hours. And the exam is only offered May through February of the following year. And the test parts, they can be taken, this is important, they can be taken in any order. But you must complete all exam parts within 3 years of passing the first test. Right? And to apply for enrollment, you have to complete that Form 23 within 1 year of passing. That's where CCC, that means Special Enrollment Exam. And with that Form 23, you apply for it, and the cost of that is $140 with that application. And then to become an enrollment agent, you have to pass a tax compliance and a suitability background check. And the tax compliance check is limited to whether the applicant has filed all their required individual and business tax returns, and whether they have failed to pay or make proper arrangements within the IRS. So that's what it's looked at. And then there's also a suitability check that is limited to whether an applicant has engaged in conduct that would justify suspension or disbarment, including whether the applicant has engaged in any disreputable conduct as defined by Circular 230. And enrolled agents the EAs have a renewal cycle. And every 3 years, and this is based on the last digit of their SSN, they have to renew every 3 years. They can renew online using pay.gov, and that's with that Form 8554. They can renew on paper, also using the Form 8554. And the renewal period is between mid-October through December 31st. Also the enrolled agents need to renew their PTIN. So not only do they need to have renew their enrollment agent certification, that is every 3 years. They also need to renew their P10, but that renew their P10 needs to be done every year. And they have to renew their P10 through mid-October through December 31st. And that's done through irs.gov. You can go and get more information /P10. And what RPO does do is that generally send out messages to remind return preparers that they need to renew. If you're an EA, that you need to renew your EA and to track your renewal cycle. But please also keep track of your own renewal cycle, because this is very important and this is a responsibility that you have as an enrolled agent. Next slide. And the one that just completed, the most recent renewal cycle that was just completed, was the one where the SSNs ended in 7, 8, 9, or there was no SSN. Without renewals, so if a tax professional that is an EA did not renew, their enrollment expired on March 31, 2024. If their SSNs ended in that 7, 8, 9, or they didn't have an SSN. And part of that process is also to verify continuing education data to make sure that that renewal can be completed. Next slide. And this is a breakdown. The one that we're currently in right now that started November 1st, 2024, and it's going to go through for the enrolled agents, it's going to go through January 31st, 2025, is for the SSNs ending in 0, 1, 2, and 3. So if those enrolled agents do not renew within the renewal cycle, then their EA certification will expire March 31st, 2025. So this is just a renewal cycle chart that you see here. Next slide. And if an enrolled agent becomes inactive, that means that they fail to renew, let's say for one renewal cycle, they can submit renewal for approval with proof of continuing education. So if you fail to renew for one renewal cycle, you can submit late renewal for approval with proof of continuing education. That's what the CE stands for. But if you fail to renew for 2 renewal cycles, then you must retake and pass that special enrollment exam. And then you must apply for re-enrollment. So it's very important to keep your enrolled agent certification renewed on a timely basis. And then here we talk about the continuing education requirements for the enrolled agents. And that's that they have to obtain 72 hours of continuing education every 3 years, and 66 hours of that are in federal taxation or federal tax-related matters, and 6 hours is in ethics. So one of the things here is that you have to obtain a minimum of 16 hours per year. So 16 hours per year must be completed during each enrollment year of your enrollment cycle. Those 3 of that cycle, that 3-year cycle, that includes the 3 years. And within each of those years, you have to have 2 hours of ethics. And they have to be, the continuing education has to be delivered by an IRS approved CE provider. Next slide. And it's very important for all the enrolled agents to keep good records, keep a record of all the CE provider information, your certification, the title of the program, the name of the instructors, the credit hours claimed, the dates attended, any handouts that you get from that continuing education course. It's very important for you to keep it in your records in case you're audited and you're asked for that information. Next slide. And when you do apply for a C credit, it's always very important when you attend a program from an IRS approved C provider like the one that Luis is here today, is for you to please correctly spell your first name and your last name and make sure that your PTIN is correct. And this matches with the letter that you received when you received your PTIN and with your online PTIN account. It's very important because if you don't provide that information like it appears on your records, then when the IRS approved C provider tries to upload your C credit, it will reject. It'll say PTIN and name mismatch, or PTIN doesn't exist. So it's very important just to review prior to submitting your final first name, last name, and PTIN that it is correct. Because if it is not, like I said, it rejects, and then the tax professional with the PTIN holder has to contact that IRS C approved provider to determine what happened. Because before you call the return preparer office that some C credit is missing, reach out to your approved C provider and let them know that you don't see your C credit in your PTIN account. And then they can check, because a lot of times what happens is that the information wasn't correctly provided, and then it needs to be corrected and resubmitted. That's very important. So just please be aware of that. And you can contact the office if you are having questions about as an enrolled agent. The enrollment office information is here on the telephone number. For example, here you have enrollment questions. You have questions concerning the Form 23, the application to practice before the IRS, or that Form 8554, which is the application for renewal to practice before the IRS. It does say here to allow about 60 days after submitting the application before you contact the office. But if you have any questions, here's a telephone number. We also have an email address at epp@irs.gov, or you can mail questions or the information that you're not sure of to that address that you see on the screen. Next slide. And now we'll talk a little bit about the PTIN requirements. As we said earlier, all enrolled agents must have a valid PTIN as part of their enrolled agent status. And anyone who prepares a U.S. tax return for compensation, they need to get a PTIN. And the fee to obtain or renew a PTIN is currently $19.75. And it's renewed annually by December 31st. You can do it online. That is the preferred method through your PTIN account, or you can use that Form W-12. Next slide. And that prepared tax identification number, just remember the PTINs belong to the individual preparing the returns, not to the business, and they cannot be inherited. They're unique to that individual PTINs. Okay? And RPO does conduct outreach to educate those tax professionals who don't renew their PTINs. Because when you prepare a tax return and you put the PTIN, your PTIN number on that tax return, it needs to be an active PTIN, a PTIN that has not been renewed. And PTINs are only good for 1 calendar year, and that's January through December. And the renewal season generally starts in mid-October. Okay, next slide. Okay. Did we get it? Okay. And like I said earlier, failure to renew results in credentials being placed in an inactive status for enrolled agents. And you must provide proof of a current PTIN when you do renew your enrolled agent certification. You have to provide proof that your PTIN is current, to have active status reinstated. So preparing returns without a valid PTIN or placing an invalid PTIN on a tax return may subject you to penalties. We said earlier, just make sure that PTIN is valid, it is active. And here you see that the penalties for failure to furnish identifying number on a paid tax return is under IRC section 6695, parent C, and for calendar year 2025 is $60 for failure, up to a maximum of $31,500. You can see the ones that for previous years here on the slide. Next slide. And now we'll move on to the annual filing season program, record of completion. And like I said earlier, that's a voluntary program for non-credentialed tax return preparers. And one of the purposes of that program was to encourage filing season readiness, promote continuing education and ethics, and to also identify those tax professionals who aspire to a higher level of professionalism. And I did state it earlier, but I'll say it here again, it provides limited representational rights to your clients, limited practice rights. And also, if you get that annual filing season program record of completion, you can be part of the directory of federal tax return preparers with credentials and select qualifications. And that's on irs.gov, that directory. Next slide. And to get that annual filing season program record of completion, you have to participate in that program, you have to take 18 or 15 hours of specific types of continuing education. And this is also from IRS approved providers. And this is done before the close of the calendar year. So to be able to participate, for example, you have to complete by December 31st, 2025 to participate in 2026. Be able to get that annual filing season program record of completion, participation. And so anyone who, so it's to have it for 2025, you had to have done it by December 31st, 2024. And also, you have, in order to get that annual filing season program record of completion, you have to consent to Circular 230, Subpart B, Section 10.51, shows here. If you don't consent to that, you will not be able to be part of that program. And also, you pass a suitability tax compliance check. And to be official, you must obtain a record of completion that IRS sends to you for participation to be official. Next slide. This is just a couple of these slides that are coming up now is showing you the annual filing season program dashboard. The return preparer office, we just revamped it and makes it easy to see what you need to do to complete in order to be able to participate in the program. And when you select, one of the selections there is the annual filing season program, then go on to the next slide. Here you can see the annual filing season program status that you have. And so it talks about the application status, if it's not complete, did you take, some people have to take the refresher tax course. Is it taken? Every time you do one of these steps, you have a check mark next to that, within that circle. The continuing education, check mark. Go on to the next slide if you completed all that. So when you go into your PTIN account and you want to check the status of your annual filing season program record of completion, you're going to see this screen. And in the next slide, it shows how you will see it, the check marks. But as you can see in the bottom there, that last one needs to be done. That's where you consent to Circular 230. So that's why it's important to consent to the Circular 230 with the form that's available, so that you can officially get the notification that you are a participant with the annual filing season program. So here you see it. Next slide. And here we just kind of see the progression from each of the different fiscal years. Is the participation within the annual filing season program has been increasing to what it was in fiscal year 24. So the 78,000. Next slide. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit of data security now, and I know Brenda's going to also talk about it in more detail, but cyber criminals really target tax professionals. There's phishing, remote takeovers, there's scams. They'll send you links, phishing emails to try to get you to click on a link. Once you click on the link in the email, they have access to your system. They can sometimes see the keys that you're clicking on, or they can get into your client files, and sometimes they can even start filing returns from your computer because they remotely take over your system. So it's very important to practice good data security and to be aware of to have a level of awareness and be aware of any identity theft situations or any security breaches that might happen within your system, and try to develop a plan to prevent them. So one of the things that we recommend, and one of the things that's required is by the Federal Trade Commission, is to have a written information security plan and what we call a WISP. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. Okay, so like I was talking earlier, safeguarding taxpayer data is very important for all tax professionals. And the Federal Trade Commission developed some safeguard rules that was required for all financial institutions, and paid tax return preparers, they fall within that category of a financial institution. It's required for you to create and maintain security plans to protect client data. And if you do have a breach, you have to notify the Federal Trade Commission as soon as possible and no later than 30 days after discovery of the security breach, including the information for at least 500 of your consumers. But you also have to, the minute you're aware that there's been a data breach with taxpayer data, you need to contact the Internal Revenue Service, and you would contact stakeholder liaison. And Brenda was going to talk a little bit about that. She does her presentation. Next slide. As tax return preparers, you are responsible for your client information, for the data. You have a lot of secure data on your clients when you prepare their tax returns. You need to restrict access to the data and just restrict the disclosure to your staff, and plan appropriate safeguards and security controls. It's important to designate someone to be responsible for safeguarding that information, and also monitor, evaluate, and adjust your security plan on a regular basis. Very important to keep the written information security plans up to date. If you need to make changes, do them as soon as you know that the change has happened. Next slide. And this is the WISP. And that is the Written Information Security Plan. And that's an essential step for your business to develop this and to prevent a data loss and to prevent tax-related identity theft. Identify all the information you have that's at risk in your system and determine what is at risk. What personal identifiable information, what we call PII, is at risk. What do you have? Identify it and be aware of the risks that can take place. Names, addresses, email addresses, Social Security. Identify it and know what you have, and then evaluate. Evaluate the effectiveness of your current safeguards for controlling the risk to this data. Review all your internal controls, such as antivirus software, keep it up to date. Data encryption, encrypt the data. Use strong passwords. 12 characters or more, the longer the better. And also limit access to taxpayer data to those who need to know. And then design a data security plan or program to protect that data. And a business, protect your data using a good plan. Cybersecurity professionals sometimes can help customize a security plan that's appropriate for your business size, the activities that you have, and your customer information. So identify, evaluate, and then design. Fine. And then you implement. You implement the safeguards and the recommendations of the cybersecurity professionals, and you ensure your security software is being is safe and is protecting your client data. Very important to keep anti-software up to date, your virus software up to date, and then monitor it and test your safeguards and design and implement a security plan and adjust it if you need it. Adjustments, the WISP is intended to be an evergreen document, but it has to be regularly reviewed and updated. And it's very important for tax professionals to monitor their EFIN and PTIN systems on a regular basis. You can go into your e-services account, to your e-file records, and determine how many returns have been filed with your EFIN. And you can compare to what you have filed to see if that's correct. Because sometimes tax professionals that are victims of a data breach, one of the things that happens is that there is they're being fraudulent returns are being filed using their EFIN number. They might not be aware of it. So one of the good things to do is to check within your e-services account, your EFIN, how many returns have been filed using your EFIN. Also, you can check the PTIN system for how many returns, 40 returns have been filed. But within the different types within e-services account, within the EFIN account. And it's important to store all your WISP off-site, that written information security plan, or you can put it in the cloud. It is a recommended best practice, especially in the event of some disaster happen. Next slide. And as we said, so you've been breached, now what? The first thing to do, very important, to contact the IRS and law enforcement. That's to your local IRS stakeholder liaison. And what stakeholder liaison does when you call them, and you can contact if you don't know who your local stakeholder liaison is, on irs.gov, there's a web page, stakeholder liaison local contacts. And on that web page on irs.gov, you'll see by state an email and a telephone number for that particular state that you're in. And you can send an email and say, I've been a victim of a breach, please contact me. You don't go into just provide your telephone number, your name, and a stakeholder liaison will contact you. And then you can explain to the stakeholder liaison what happened. And the stakeholder liaison takes the information and will enter it into the return prepare database to notify criminal investigation, to notify the Return Integrity Compliance Service, RICS, that you have been a victim of a data breach. And you then will be contacted by the Return Integrity Compliance Service in order to work with you to make sure that your client's information is secure going forward, and that any fraudulent returns are removed from your client's records. And then also you can contact the FBI if needed, the Secret Service if directed by the IRS, and you can need to file a local police department, file a report with a local police department. Next slide. And many states have different procedures, so it's very important to contact the Federal Tax Administration at, you can email this. You can email the state alerts at tax administrate, you see here, taxadmit.org, and they will send you information on the reporting that is required for your state. Not all states have the same procedures in place, so please email Federal Tax Administration to get the requirements for your state. And the Attorney General for each state you prepare returns. Most states require that the Attorney General be notified of data breaches. And after you do all that, you should contact experts, security expert, to determine what happened within your system, the cause, the scope of the breach, to stop the breach, and to prevent any future breaches. And if you do have insurance, you need to report the breach and determine your policy coverage. Next slide. And one of the important things is to contact clients and other services. Clients, you can send them a letter to all the victims informing them of the breach. The Federal Trade Commission can assist businesses victimized by data theft, including resources of notifying the client. So the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, they have examples of letters to send to your clients on their web page, on the FTC webpage. Contact credit ID theft protection agencies, credit bureaus, and I'm sure Brenda will talk a little bit more about that when she does her presentation. Next slide. And these are the best security practice. And I know that these probably will go in what Brenda will tell you later, but it's learn to recognize and avoid phishing emails and phishing scams. Many times we have seen the ones where they'll send tax preparers a phishing email saying, I really need a new preparer. Do you have the ability to represent me, to prepare my return, can you? And then when the tax return preparer says, yes, I am willing to prepare your return, they'll send another email with an attachment. And when the tax return preparer opens the attachment, they get into their system. And that's a phishing email. They try to make it seem, sometimes they will spoof emails to make it as closely as possible as a legitimate email, so that you think, okay, this is from my client, and then you click on the link. That's how. So you have to be very, very careful. Use strong security software to protect against malware and viruses. Encrypt your taxpayer data and use those virtual private networks, VPNs. Use strong passwords that are unique, and very important always to keep your personal and your business computers separate, so that there is no situation where your client information goes into your personal mobile devices or your personal email accounts. And watch for those harmful pop-ups. Sometimes people have gotten those pop-ups and they say, oh, you need to update your system now. When they do that, it's a scam and they've been breached. And like that, be careful on downloading software. And do not connect personal or untrusted storage devices or hardware into computers, mobile devices, or networks. We've had situations where people, sometimes you've got a Wi-Fi, your printer, you connect to your printer through Wi-Fi. The bad actors have gotten into the Wi-Fi through their printer and get into the system. Anything that you connect to your business where you have your client data, especially when you use Wi-Fi, that opens it up. Someone coming in and maybe breaching your system through your Wi-Fi connections to your system. Next slide. And here are some of the resources that we have for tax professionals. That publication 4557, Safeguarding Taxpayer Data. We have the 5708, which has creating a written information security plan that gives you help on parts to a WISP. And also there's a lot of great information in the National Institute of Standards and Technology webpage. And a good idea, we always encourage it, is to subscribe to the e-news for tax professionals. That you can go to irs.gov and search e-news subscriptions and subscribe. And within those e-news for tax professionals, we always, if we hear of a new scam that's happening, as soon as we hear it, we include it in that e-news for tax professionals, just to let tax professionals be aware of what is happening. Next slide. And we have in the Return Prepare office, we're working on modernization, and now we have that form 14157, Return Prepare Complaint. That's available to complete and fill online. You can submit a complaint using that form online. You can go to irs.gov, search for that form 14157. Next slide. So here is what you can use that form for. You can report improper tax practice preparation, a failure to enter a PTIN on a tax return, failure to sign tax returns, falsely claiming to be a CPA, an attorney, an enrolled agent, refusing to provide clients with copies of tax return, or preparing client returns using off-the-shelf tax software or IRS free file when they should not be doing that. And this is very important. So as tax professionals, even if you're aware of another tax professional that's not doing what they should be doing, and you can report them using this form 14157. And it's very simple now because can be done through online. And you will only, just to let you know, you will only receive acknowledgement of your complaint, not what's going on. You will receive that they acknowledge that we did receive the form. Next slide. And here are some reminders. Just remember, PTINs and enrollment numbers belong to you, not to the firm or the business. And when I'm obtaining either, use a personal email address. One of the biggest issues we see is tax pros unable to access their online PTIN account once they no longer have access to that email, that address assigned to their firm or business. So what this is just saying is when you apply for a PTIN, use your personal email address so you don't lose access to it. And RPO will never send unsolicited emails requesting your PTIN or an update to your PTIN information. And when you do get something and you're not sure about it, you can contact the PTIN account information line. And you see that number there, 877-613 PTIN, which is 7846. Next slide. And check your online P10 account on a regular basis. RPO does send messages and correspondence to your secure mailbox within your P10 account. You can also use your online account to track the number of tax returns associated with your P10 in a calendar year. But in order to see any numbers there, you have to file a minimum 50 returns. So if you filed less than 50, you will not see that in your P10 account. And you can also use your P10 account to track your continuing education credits. And those credits are in your P10 account by calendar year. So anything you did in 2023, you just click on that and you'll see 2023, 2024. Now we're in 2025. And update your account information also within your P10 account. You can do that, mailing addresses, business name, phone numbers, etc. Next slide. This is the important website pages that for you to know that irs.gov/P10. We have irs.gov/taxpros. That's just all the information for tax pros. If you find information on identity theft, you can go to irs.gov/identity theft. There's a Facebook page for IRS tax pros, a well, I'm sorry, but this is the X now. So formerly known as Twitter, X has also an IRS tax pro, and we've got YouTube. A lot of the webinars that we have through Stakeholder Liaison, the web conference team, now they're being posted on the IRS YouTube channel. So if you go to the IRS YouTube channel, you'll see some playlists. There is a playlist for tax pros, but there's also a playlist for webinars. And that's where we're uploading for anyone who wants to see archived versions of the webinars that are done by Stakeholder Liaison. But remember, any of those webinars that are archived, we do not offer CE credit for viewing an archived version of those webinars. We only offer CE for the webinars that are during the live broadcast. And so next slide. And here's a couple of key points. Anyone who prepares tax returns for compensation must have a P10. P10s are good for 1 calendar year, that's January through December. P10s must be renewed annually, usually start mid-October to December 31st. Enrolled agents have unlimited practice rights, and with the IRS and the annual filing season program has limited practice rights, and it is a voluntary program for non-credential return preparers. And the annual filing season program, like I already said to you, is limited practice rights. And the federal law requires paid tax return preparers to have a risk-based security plan for the protection of their customer information. And remember to report any client data theft to your local stakeholder liaison. Okay, next slide. And here's where we can open it up to questions, Luis.
Ok, muy bien. Thank you, Lice. Excelente presentación. Hay datos ahí que nos quedamos, wow, qué interesante conocer la oficina de ustedes. Algunas preguntas, si nos las escriben, las vamos a pasar a Lice y luego compartimos la respuesta por si hay algo que ella tenga que investigar un poquito más, nos puede ayudar mejor. Así que gracias a Lice por excelente presentación, muy completa, muy al día. Me encanta saber que los datos están al día y, como siempre, se nota el compromiso de los oficiales de la IRS como ella, básicamente pendiente, ¿verdad? Pendiente para apoyarlo, como ella decía. Esa es la misión que tienen en la oficina y lo están cumpliendo. Así que muchas gracias, Licey. Te queda un poquito por ahí. So now it's coming Brenda Look. Como decía Lice, Brenda nos va a hablar un poquito en detalle del plan de seguridad y usted diría, bueno, pero ya escuché un poquito también. Esto es bien importante que usted tenga su plan de seguridad antes del día del 27 de enero. No envíe una declaración de impuestos sin tener en vigor su plan. No tiene que contratar o pagar quizá miles de dólares, pero lo puede seguir con las publicaciones. Le vamos a enviar las publicaciones nuevamente, por si usted lo quiere hacer por usted mismo. Y le vamos a regalar un webinar que nosotros tenemos donde puede aprender a preparar su plan. Pero si usted tiene varios empleados, tiene varias oficinas, tiene varias computadoras, se recomienda, como Lice nos mencionaba, asesorarse de un especialista en seguridad cibernética, en un especialista en computadora. Pero esa es la mejor recomendación. Si alguno de ustedes, como yo, tiene seguro, pues hay que tener el plan para que el seguro pueda cubrir en una situación. Y el robo de datos es diario en los Estados Unidos y al año pasa de 10 millones de casos de robo de identidad. Así que no se arriesgue, prepare su plan para antes que comience la temporada. Además, cuando usted renovó el PITIN, dijo que lo tenía. Así que tiene que tenerlo, ¿ok? Ok. So let's welcome again to Brenda Luke. Brenda, let me open your presentation. Let me finish here. Alice presentation. And I know, Brenda, you are going to talk about data security, but you have other point of view about the presentation, especially because you are our contact. So if something happened in New York, we send it to you and you contact the agency. So this is very, very important to remember. Don't try to get, action from the police or the FBI by yourself. Contact your local stakeholder liaison like we have here Brenda and the entire team. So let me, Brenda, share your presentation. Okay. Y algunas preguntas que están ahí las voy a revisar y las vamos a contestar. Ok, Brenda.
Sí, por favor, Luis, sí. Me las pueden mandar para yo contestarlas todas, ¿ok?
Sí, yo le voy a escribir. Gracias por
Sí,
sacar hoy de su
sí.
tiempo.
Yo sé que el tiempo es más corto. Ok, gracias.
Sí, lo sabemos. Ok, Brenda, let me... now.
Okay, good
Brenda,
afternoon. Good afternoon. Today I'm going to talk about how you can protect your clients' tax data. Because as previously, when Lizette was speaking about, it is necessary for you to have a plan because you are tax preparers and it's important for you to protect your taxpayers' data. So we're going to talk about that today, what you can do to protect the data. So one of the things that we have six, the Security 6, which we talk about is antivirus software. We talk about firewalls. We're going to talk about two-factor authentication, backup software services, and drive encryption, and virtual private network, which better known as VPN. I mean, if we're able to at least have these in our possession, it helps us to protect our taxpayers' data. So we're going to go through that right now. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so number one with this here, we're talking about security, number one, antivirus. And what it talks about is why we should do this, okay? Using, this is an overlook at times that people have, but we want to stress the importance of having antivirus software. And antivirus software scans the computer for files of certain patterns that may have indicated the presence of malicious software called malware. Antivirus software vendors regularly find new security risks and are constantly updating their files. So it is important that professionals such as yourself have the latest updates installed on their computer, because this is what the IRS highly recommends for tax professionals. And this antivirus software updates automatically. We suggest that you check that. So please keep your antivirus software set in automatic mode to receive the information. And I'm hoping that all of you already have antivirus software. I'm sure all of you do. So let's go on to number 2. Number 2 is the firewalls. Firewalls provide protection against outside attackers by shielding your computer or network from malicious or unnecessary web traffic. It also prevents malicious software from accessing your systems. And firewalls can be configured to block data from certain suspicious software. Firewalls may be broadly categorized as hardware or software firewalls. Hardware, software, or firewalls are external devices which are positioned between a computer and the internet, like a router or a modem. Hardware-based firewalls are particularly useful in protecting multiple computers and to control the network. And there are also software firewalls. I'm sure even you may know with the IRS, we have several firewalls so that people cannot hack our computers. Now, firewalls do not guarantee that a computer will not be attacked. Firewalls primarily help protect against malicious traffic, but against malicious programs, malware may be protect the device. So that is important for you to think about. Now, let's go to number 3. Number 3 is very important because many tax software providers now offer customer multi-factor authentication protection to prevent their client from data from being stolen by cyber criminals. This here multi-factor authentication is not just for you as tax preparers. A lot of times when we call agencies or to get information, they'll send you also a number or tell you, I will send it to your telephone, which is the best way. That is multi-factor authentication. Now there are 2 types of multi-factor authentication. The first being a multi-factor authentication process. Now, I'm not saying that these things are not going to work, but it will help to prevent a data theft. Then there is a second type of multi-factor authentication. With this type of multi-factor authentication, you log into your tax software and wait for a PIN to be set to your cell phone. I'm sure all of us are used to that happening. And then you enter the PIN into the software in order to gain access to the software. Basically what I'm saying, I'm not saying it won't prevent it, but these are things that you can use as necessary things to help them not get to your system so fast. Now, one thing that we find, we want to think about this business model based on charging people to relieve them of their taxes. Because remember, this is just an extra layer of protection because beyond just a password, because you're giving the taxpayer information and they're securing you as their tax preparer and hoping that your data do not become breached. So it is important for you to take all sorts of avenues to help their information from becoming breached. Now we're going to go to security 6, number 4. We want to make sure that we back up our system. It's critical that files on computers should be routinely backed up to external sources. This would mean a copy of the file is being made and stored either online as a part of the cloud storage, or a copy of the file is being made on an external disk, such as an external hard drive. In addition, you want to back up the system should there periodically be a test or hackers that are going in, and so that you would also find it easier. And you want to practice this on a continuous basis. So, and also you want to encrypt the backup data for the safety of the information. Now we're going to go to number 5. Number 5, we're talking about encryption. So given the sensitivity of clients' data, you want to make that you're maintaining your computer, you want to make sure you consider the drive encryption so that people do not readily just get into your information. So it says how you should use the software for a full disk encryption. You want the drive encryption or disk encryption, as we discussed. You want to transform the data on a computer into an unreadable file to any unauthorized persons. We don't want to just make it so that anybody can get our information. So you want to look at it. This is your information that you're protecting your clients. As we said with the data breach, in case it happens, all of your taxpayers that was on that file would have to be contacted. So it's important beforehand that you do everything you can to protect them or protect the hackers from getting into your system. Now we're going to go to security number 6. Okay, this is a virtual private network. This is the VPN. Next slide. Okay. So a virtual VPN, it provides a secured encrypted tunnel to transmit data between a remote user and the internet. So there's many tax preparers who during the filing season work a half a day in the office. So you want to know from 7 in the morning until 7 in the evening and then go home. But you want to know what's going on. So as a result of many tax preparers connect their office computer from a remote condition, which is fine. But working remotely comes with risk. Using remote access software instead of without a VPN, it puts you in a position again where you can be hacked. A VPN provides secure encrypted tunnels, as we stated, between a remote user or the internet. So do yourself a favor and use a VPN. Also, do not use unprotected Wi-Fi. A lot of times people will use Wi-Fi that may be at an airport or maybe in the library or maybe just outside driving. But that VPN is not protected. We want to make sure that we are using something protected. You work hard and you deserve uninterrupted changes or what you're doing. But but it's important for you to take these steps prior to you actually going forward with taking the break or whatever you're doing. You want to make sure the information is covered. Another example of password lockout is software where you enter the incorrect password and then a specific number of times it may lock you out. They use one computer to prepare tax returns and a separate computer to open mail. That might be a help. If you have 2 computers, that may help. One that you get your regular mail in and the other ones in which you prepare to return. Because what happens is we may ask if, just like Lizette previously stated, she said, in the event that there is a hack, you would notify your SL. Some of the questions we're going to ask you when we're taking information is, how do you think it happened? And a lot of people will say, I don't know. But it is important for you, as you're doing the return, for you to be conscious. I've had situations where people said they just got up to have a cup of coffee. And they came back and they noticed the information was completed already. So we want to make sure that when you're preparing a return, you want to check it back and forth. Because is this something you prepared, or is this something that somebody got in your computer and completed? With data breaches, it doesn't take very long. There have been situations where as soon as someone, as I said, got up, they came back, most of the data you had entered already. And all what that person did and maybe you're not even going to check it again because you think everything is okay. They went in and changed and rerouted the bank and the person's address to their location. So you want to make sure what you're putting down is correct. And if you have to get up, you want to take whatever chances that you do. But when you go to prepare the return, you want to have all your documents there at the time that you're preparing the return, because within 2 seconds, something could happen and someone can take over your computer. And once they get in, it's very hard to get out. So as she previously stated, you should have a plan in mind before you start preparing these tax returns. So, and VPNs are security. It allows a person to have security, and you're not putting yourself at risk by going through, like a lot of times people are traveling or driving and they're going into their website through an open, I would say, Wi-Fi. That's making yourself susceptible. Also, you're in a hotel and you may use the Wi-Fi from the hotel. Again, that's public knowledge or public Wi-Fi. You do not want to put yourself nor your taxpayer in that situation. So we're going to continue talking about this now. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we want to educate ourselves on phishing scams. And we want, there's many data thefts that start with a phishing email. You click on the link and then you find that it's a fake website. You open an attachment with another embedded malware. Then they have spear phishing, an email to pose as a trusted source, such as an accountant takeover or ransom. So now I'm just mentioning some of these things, but they can happen. The IRS often sees tax professionals victimized after being targeted with attack. And this is called spear phishing. The object of the spear phishing is to pose as a trusted source. A lot of times people actually do that. You think it can be Norton. Someone can make you think that there's some other type of software that's trying to help you. And once you give them the information, they have taken over the computer. As we said, it's important. A link may seem to go into a trusted website. For example, a cloud storage or tax software. They may provide login page, but it's actually a website controlled by a data theft. Then the data app that takes all control of your account. And an attachment may contain miscellaneous software called keylogging, which secretly infects your computer. How many times that this happens? Common spear phishing scams seen by the IRS include data thieves posing as a prospective client. Also, sending an unsolicited email to tax professionals. And after exchange of emails, the data in the theft sends an email with an attachment. The IRS also sees data thieves posing as software providers, data storage providers, or even the IRS with emails. Again, these are all tricks. Another trick may be used by the thieves is rather than stealing the data, they encrypt it in a practice known as ransomware. Once they encrypt the data, the thieves demand a ransom, and in return, they provide a key to unlock the data. That is said, the IRS has seen instances where not only the ransomware was installed, however, on a tax professional computer, but their information was stolen as well. Again, I just want to remind you that the most common ways tax professionals' data breaches are occurring throughout phishing is phishing. So please be extremely important, or think of it as very important for you when you get these emails. Is it really the person? And it is important because once they get into your system, it's really, really a problem that you have to handle. Next slide. You want to recognize the signs of the client data theft. Tax professionals should learn the signs of a possible data theft. Data thefts may result in a fraudulent tax return being filed in their client's name. As it says, cyber criminals are tax savvy in their attempt to gain sensitive tax data. It's important to realize that these individuals, they have studied and they're going forward to their schools to learn how to get in your information. And most of them are very suave. They know what to do. So it's important for you to protect the data that the clients have entrusted you with. But as we said, they make it look so real that you're easy to fall for what they're saying. Next slide. We're going to talk about some signs of data theft. A client e-file returns began to reject. One indicator of a data theft is when an unusual number of tax returns began to be rejected as duplicate filing. Many times that we've seen that. It's so many times that you go and you look at it and it says, you go to look for the acknowledgement and it says it was rejected or it was previously filed. So it's important for you to take note of that. What is this meaning? And clients who haven't filed tax returns begin to receive these letters. And it's important for you to be able to see, like, when did the person get the letter? I mean, you might say, well, I didn't finish the tax return. But we have seen that several times. As Lizette said, I am your point of contact for data theft. And there's been many, many cases, particularly last year, where I had to take in information and there were several returns that was rerouted or the person had rejected. And what did the tax preparer say? I don't know that how it happened. I mean, when did they complete it? But again, you have these data thefts that's out there. I mean, they started looking for information, I would say back in October or September, and they could have done this by sending you various emails and you responded. So they're always looking for ways to get into your computer system. So, and these are clients who haven't filed tax returns and they're receiving refunds. And you're saying, well, how did that happen? Well, somehow they got into your system and they received the Social Security number from the actual person, or they were able to somehow or another get it from your software, and you might not have been aware of what they were doing. So they practice what they're doing, and they're good at what they're doing. And they realize how much damage that they do to other people's returns. And you don't want to be that person because it can affect your business, because you're now, again, as we said, you're going to contact, if you're a victim of data theft, you're going to have to contact all the people that you filed the returns. And so not only are the taxpayers are going to be affected, if they have dependents on that tax return, they're going to be affected as well. So you want to keep your business. So it's important for you to stay up on this, especially the signs of clients' data theft, because it can affect your business in the long run. And we know that you put a lot of time and effort to maintaining this business, but within 2 seconds, someone can come into the system and destroy it. But let's go on to the next slide. What we're going to talk about now is signs of clients' data theft. This continues on. It says the number of returns filed by the firm under their electronic filing, and that's going to affect the EFID number and also the PTIN number. And it said here are two indicators not mentioned on the slide. First, your computer cursor starts moving. And I've been told that. All of a sudden, you're sitting there and the computer, your cursor is moving. You're saying, well, who's doing that? That's that person that got into your computer. So it's important for you to be aware when you're typing what's going on, because those individuals can actually get into your computer. Also, it mentions to see the number of returns the IRS has on record. The tax preparers can go into their EFID status and take a look at that. You want to make sure you are constantly keeping up with what's going on. Don't just think, oh, well, I'll come back to it later on. Every day, you should look and see how many is filed and are these returns that I filed? And if something starts to look strange, you need to be looking at that. Don't wait to the last minute. And here are some other indicators that's mentioned on the slide. First, your computer cursor, as we said, start moving without you ever touching it. And also, to receive the IRS acknowledgments for the tax returns that you did not file. And it has an indicator that the hacker is filing fraudulent returns. So again, you don't want to be just trusting. You want to make sure that you're going in and you're checking what's being done. You are checking. And you want to make sure, who are you giving authority to use the computer? I mean, because when we have to take in the information for data theft, one of the questions I'm going to have is who had access to the computer? Who had the PTINs that's available? So it's important for you to keep note of this, because that way you can kind of figure out what happened. So we will continue to talk about some of the things that could happen, how we can fix it. Next slide. This is, again, signs of data theft continued. The client starts to receive tax transcripts that they did not request. Clients who created an online account start receiving IRS notices that their accounts was accessed or disabled when they have not accessed their account. A client unexpectedly received IRS notices that an IRS account was created in their name. And also, your client starts to receive correspondence from the IRS. The person's going to ask, why am I receiving correspondence? Well, that's because someone else went in there and created the account and also is a victim of identity theft. Next slide. Basically here, steps to protect data theft. Again, never open or download attachments from unknown senders. The password should be protected in encrypted documents. Do not respond to suspicious or unknown emails. If IRS related, forward it to phishing@irs.gov. So to protect yourself, send only password protected encrypted documents. If filed, it must share with the client. And these are various things that can help you. Let's go to the next slide. This is data compromise action items, okay? As it said, you want to contact the IRS. Tax professionals contact IRS stakeholder liaison. As you know, covering for New York here, it's myself, Brenda Stewart Luke, and I know that there are various other tax preparers from other states. You can go to IRS.gov and you can look up the stakeholder liaison in your area. And what I will also do is send it to Louis so that he can forward it to you, of the stakeholder liaison that's in your area, so that we can help you. You're not alone, but it's important for you to take note of what's going on. Should a tax professional experience a data compromise, whether by cyber criminals, theft, or just an accident, they should report the data to their local IRS stakeholder liaison, which I talked about, which would be me. And the timing of the reporting is critical. If the data breach is reported quickly, the IRS can take steps to mitigate some of the problems created by the data breach. So be prepared to submit a complete client list of the IRS to the IRS, which begins with the process of protecting your client. While the IRS cannot prevent fraudulent returns from being e-filed, the IRS can prevent fraudulent returns from being fully posted to the IRS system. So the main thing is, as soon as you figure that something happened, you want to get in contact with the IRS. Next slide. Also, data compromise action, it will be submitted to the insurance company, the security alert. All these are things they should also need to contact the insurance company. That means that you should have insurance. If you are a practitioner, you should have insurance so that in the event that something happened, it can cover you. You want to contact state revenue agencies, and you want to email Federation of Tax Administrators for the state agencies, this information here, and also the state attorney general. So a victim of identity theft and ransomware should consult with computer and security experts. One of the questions I will ask, have you a security plan? What is your security plan? What have you done? Any breach of personal information could have an effect on the victim's tax account with the state. The state attorney for each state, the tax professional prepares return should also be contacted. Most states require the attorney general to be notified if the data breach occurred. And in addition, if the data breach includes more than 1,000 customers, the breach must be reported to the Federal Trade Commission. So again, if it's more than 1,000 customers, it has to be reported to the Federal Trade Commission. Next slide. Okay. What is identity PIN? Well, it's a 6-digit number, and it's assigned to eligible taxpayers, and it helps the IRS verify taxpayers' identity. Prevent someone else. So we encourage, in the event that you become a victim, you have to call the taxpayer and ask them that they have to get an ID PIN. And this comes out every year because this is going to protect them. So as we previously discussed, there are many security measures that tax practitioners can help to protect their clients. And IP PIN numbers are known only to you, your client, and the IRS. Each January, a new PIN comes out. So it's important for the person to protect themselves, and you're also going to protect them by telling them that they have to get an IP PIN. Next slide. An IP PIN is valid for 1 year, as we discussed. And a current new year IP PIN must be used when filing the federal tax return. So a new IP PIN is generally each year for your client. And it's important to note that the client can opt out of the IP PIN process if they choose to. They do not have to stay there, but they can choose not to be in it anymore. Next slide. They can get an IPIN through online services that will help them. To get an IP PIN, they would complete form 15227 and apply. They can apply in person at the IRS Tax Center, which they would have to make an appointment. And they would get an IP PIN tool on the IRS website. If your client already has an IRS account, all they have to do is to enter the user's name and password. And if you already have an account, we need the IRS account allow you to access the IRS online tools. And you want to verify identity using ID.me. And one of the things, it's important to note that clients who use the online, they get an IPIN tool to download. So all this is valuable to keep that person in compliance. Next slide. Again, this is talking more options to get the PIN. It says if your adjusted gross income on your last filed return is below $79,000 for individuals, if you cannot verify the income online. And so it tells you what you have to do. You would have to, you have the option to complete form 15527 and application for the identity PIN. So the IRS assistant will call the taxpayer to self-identify. So it's important. Again, these are different options in order to get the IP PIN. Next slide. And it tells you what you need to do if you cannot authenticate your identity online. And If you're ineligible for Form 15527, you may schedule an appointment at the taxpayer identity office. This is important for you to know. And if you're going to come to the walk-in office, it's important for when you make that appointment to tell them everything that you want to cover that day, because if you do not put everything down, they may not be able to see you. So everything, if you want to talk about anything additional other than getting the pen, make sure when you make that appointment, you include that. Next slide. If you do not have a pen, do not share that pen with anyone but your trusted tax professional. So no one's going to call you or should be calling you to ask you for the number. So we have IRS publication 5367 that goes into more detail on what you need to do. But again, if you become a victim of identity theft, you want to share this information with your clients. Next slide. Basically, it says, I'm aware that tax pay preparers must have identity security plan. So as she discussed before, Lizette talked about, you must have a plan, because if you don't, it makes you a victim. So you need to know, what are you going to do in the event that has happened? How are you going to prevent it? Because you can't have people, randomly on your computer. You want to keep an eye on what will you do. Like it was suggested before, you can have 2 separate computers, one that you get emails and one that you prepare returns. But you want to be able to protect your taxpayers' data. Next slide. Again, we talked about that. Lizette went in detail about creating a written information security plan for your tax and your accounting practice. This is necessary. You need to have this plan, this WIPS, in order. So before the filing season, you should be talking about that with your staff as well as yourself. It's important for you to have this in place, because that will prevent a lot of headaches in the future. Next slide. We have resources that's available for you. Publication 44557, Safeguarding Taxpayer Data. Publication 5293, Data Security Resource Guide for Tax Professionals. And publication 5708, Creating a Written Information Security Plan for Your Tax and Accounting Practice. Some people may say, I've never done that, but through our publications, we will help you walk through the process. You're not by yourself. And feel free, in the event that you need help, to reach out to myself or any of the stakeholder liaisons that's in your area. Next slide. Issue management resolution. It provides a mechanism for raising concerns. IRS has this. This is a mechanism, again, that will help you facilitate identity theft or resolution. We look for ways to improve or change our system, and you're valuable as persons, taxpayers, tax preparers, to help. And if you see ways in which things can get better, please feel free to complete that. Next slide. That's it. Okay. Well, I hope this information was valuable. As I said, we taking data security information, or so many of the people that have been breached. This is something going on all year long. And there have been quite a many breaches. And I mean, I talk about New York, but overall, it's important for you to have that plan in place and use all those tools that I spoke about on those 6 tools. And I hope the information was helpful to you, because we don't want it to happen to you, because it can affect your business and the people that you are entrusted to do their return. So please take a look at those publications, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak with you today.
Thank you, Brenda. Wow. You know what? It's not duplicated, the presentation. It's excellent information we need to know, especially before January 27. So thank you, Brenda. Wow.
You're welcome.
Qué bien. Yo estaba tomando nota aquí, mire, llevo 2 páginas de ambos lados, así que vamos a enviar las publicaciones, tal como lo puso Brenda, Vamos a enviar los PDF del Licey, de Brenda, y cómo crear el plan, de modo que usted pueda avanzar. Algunos han preguntado si hay que pagar. Si lo hace usted, pues no tiene que pagarse. Pero si contrata una compañía, pues posiblemente sí, ¿verdad? Ese es el negocio de algunas compañías. Así que haga su due diligence y busque esa compañía si quiere intentarlo por usted mismo. Pero sugerencia, no inicie el lunes 27 a transmitir sin un plan de seguridad de datos. No lo haga, no lo haga. Usted sabe, sería, es correr riesgo que no es necesario. Bueno, estamos en la etapa final, queremos recordar lo que hemos hecho hoy, presentamos nuestro calendario. Mucha gente dijo que sí, que quiere Serie A, así que vamos a ver si vienen a nuestra clase, mayo 19 al 23, por primera vez, un evento único en todo el país, en Miami, con Odali, que ya está por aquí, en Nueva York con un servidor y virtual. Y si usted no puede darse viajecitos, si tiene otras situaciones, pero si quiere venir a la Gran Manzana, ¿verdad? Tan importante en nuestra ciudad, tanta gente buena que vivimos aquí. Venga, venga y pásese toda la semana, que le vamos a ayudar con actividades para que conozca nuestra ciudad. ¿Quiere ir a Miami? ¿Quiere ir a la playa? Odali le va a dar un tour allá en las bellas zonas de playa de Miami Beach. ¿No quiere viajar? Pues se quede en su casa, ¿verdad? Se pone ropa de fiesta de aquí para arriba y de aquí para abajo, no, lo que quiera, y viene con nosotros. Quiero también agradecer a todos los que están en Facebook, que nos están saludando. Es una participación excelente de este grupo y de más personas que eventualmente van a ver el video. Así que antes de terminar, estamos poniendo de nuevo el folleto. La gente le ha gustado. Gracias, Gabriela. Me encanta el folleto. Es la primera vez que lo hacemos, pero vamos a seguir mejorando. Así que cualquier idea que usted tenga, nos la hace llegar y la pasamos con Gabriela, que es nuestra editora ya permanente, ya no se va de nosotros. Gracias por usar todo el talento que Dios te ha dado para producir cosas buenas. Bueno, llegó Dali, nuestra directora educativa. Estaba ahí con los clientes atendiendo. Eso es parte del trabajo de nosotros. Pero tú has estado aquí presente, así que un saludo a todos los que están con nosotros. Bienvenida.
Hola, buenas tardes, saludos para todos. Para mí es un placer estar aquí, aunque no pude estar presente al momento, bueno, participar en el momento de la presentación del calendario. Espero lo hayan disfrutado tanto como nosotros cuando lo estábamos organizando. Y la participación del IRS ha estado estelar, estelar. Me encanta, me encanta. Esto es algo muy, muy importante ahora para comienzos de temporada y sobre todo mirar esos números. Estábamos en 60,000 y tantos en el año 2020 de preparadores registrados que pasan el Annual Filing Season Program todos los años y demás, pues que haya aumentado a 78,000 y tantos, pues todos nosotros somos parte de esa estadística. Así es que espero que ese número siga creciendo y aparte de eso, con toda esta participación de la IRS, pues tenemos la oportunidad de planificar, aprender, reforzar nuestras prácticas profesionales, asegurando que estemos alineados en las mejores estrategias y actualizaciones. Así que gracias por estar presente, gracias licenciado por estar siempre a la vanguardia, por tener siempre a la IRS ahí a la derecha de nosotros para que participen activamente con nosotros. Así que los invito a que sigan participando y aprovechando al máximo todo lo que Ameritax tiene preparado para ustedes en este 2025. Y ya saben, les deseo una temporada de impuestos con mucho, mucho éxito y nuevamente gracias por acompañarnos. Saludos para todos.
Excellent. Brenda, most people is writing, thank you, Brenda, for your time. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Brenda. So I have to say thank you, obviously, and say thank you to your entire office. So anytime we contact Brenda, she's there. This is fantastic. And she know we are here to support the IRS in any way we can do to support your office and also to be, part of the tax professional when they have issue. I know it's difficult. It's not good idea to continue talking about the issue like Brenda said. So contact the IRS. Don't try to promote, oh, I have problem. Me robaron la data. Haga silencio y comuníquese con el IRS. En la página del IRS están las oficinas como la de Brenda en cada ciudad, pero Si uno de esos momentos no lo encuentra, nos escribe a nosotros y sé que Brenda nos puede ayudar. So Brenda, see you next Wednesday with due diligence. You love due diligence. I am learning from you for a long time, talking in different places about due diligence. So next Wednesday, el próximo miércoles a las 2 de la tarde, hora del este, vamos a tener el Día Nacional de Concientización sobre la Debida Diligencia. Va a ser nuestro último webinar hasta que pase la temporada, así que aproveche. Serán 2 créditos de ética y es libre de costo. Ya tenemos más de unos 140, 160 personas registradas y esperemos que el Zoom se nos llene a nuestra cuenta de 500. Todos son bienvenidos. Vamos a seguir promoviendo durante el fin de semana. Si todavía quiere venir a nuestro Tax Update de negocio, tiene chance. Vamos a escribir, Dali, por favor, escríbeme el website para beneficio de todos. Es el próximo lunes. Next Monday, Brenda, is holiday for you. Martin Luther King and the inauguration day for the new administration. So it's Martin Luther King Day. Pero nosotros vamos a estar con una sola tanda de Business Update de 1 a 6 de la tarde, hora del este. Todavía tiene chance. Antonio Nava, Odalis Parra, Carmen García y un servidor estaremos nuevamente presentando. Así que gracias a todos. Sí, se pueden todavía registrar.
Un momentito, licenciado, ya le voy a compartir el enlace.
Y vamos a poner el enlace también de, no sé si Gabriela lo tiene más a la mano, lo tengo yo aquí, yo creo que yo lo tengo, aquí está.
Ahí está el de Tax Day Summit de negocios para el próximo lunes 20 de 1 a 6 de la tarde, hora del este.
Y vamos a publicar ahora aquí está el enlace de Zoom, ok, para next Wednesday. So click now on the link, ok.
O lo pueden escanear
O los míos lo pueden
también.
hacer, ok. Así que, so Brenda, thank you. Lise,
Thank you, Brenda.
today is Friday. It's long weekend for the federal employee. Brenda, enjoy the weekend. Say hello to your family from our family. So, gracias a todos. Gracias, Dali. Gracias, Lady. Gracias, Gabriela. A los que están más lejos, gracias por sacar de su tiempo. Nos vemos el miércoles a las 2 de la tarde con la debida diligencia. Hasta luego.
Amén. Chao.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.